Hi, this is Jen Bankard with the BTN Group, and I'm here with Dan Raine, CEO of Unlocked Data. Dan, welcome to Business Travel Show Europe.
Yeah, great. Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me. It's great that there's so much noise going on outside, even at this time on the second day.
Exactly. Still lots of buzz.
Yeah.
How has the show been for you so far?
It's been a good show. It's we just love being out, meeting people, seeing our customers, meeting prospects, old friends. The industry. That's one of the highlights for me, just catching up with a lot of people. But it's been a good show. Yesterday, lots of appointments, and today more walk-ups, so kind of meeting people. But there's a good buzz. Did a session yesterday on sustainability, on travel savings and control, and that's really well attended. So I got some good questions in the audience. So hopefully people got a lot out of that as well.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it went well. So tell us, what is Unlocked Data? What do you do?
Yeah, well, we're a technology company, a data company specializing in travel. I've been around in the industry for 20 years or so. A lot of that time focused on data. And we recognize that for many corporate buyers, they have the challenge of to really understand what their total trip cost is. What are they spending, not just through the agency, but also what they're seeing through their expense tool or through their credit cards. And really, we help them by pulling that all together to give a total idea of what they're spending. And most importantly, helping them to answer the questions that their business is asking by putting data into the hands of travelers or into line managers or to the CEO even. But taking that kind of step from not just serving the travel manager, but also all of their internal customers as well.
Absolutely. So as travel returns, we know things are a lot different. We can't necessarily rely on the same historical data we've used in the past. So what are the demands that travel managers are facing in regards to data for their program?
Yes, I think it's a really tough time for travel managers right now because, as you say, everything's changing. Some of the old metrics potentially don't even work anymore. And at the same time, they're facing pressure from their business to deal with the operational challenges, people asking questions, maybe new employees who have joined the organisation and travelling for the first time. So we just look in the travel manager's eyes and see they've got a lot going on right now. And data's a big part of that. And I think as travel's returning, every budget holder in the organisation is kind of keeping a watch on what's happening. This CFOs particularly, but everyone within the organisation probably travels at a higher degree of focus than it's probably been for a very long time. But we see travel managers who are getting asked daily, how are we doing? What we committed to do, for example, 50% of 2019 volumes. How are we tracking against that? And how are we forecasting? What's that going to look like for the rest of the year? So those kind of questions are coming through all the time, and I think the challenge for travel managers, how do you respond to all of those as well as do everything else? And how do you respond in a way that is not just kind of having to be firefighting all the time, but how do you kind of get on the front foot and get ahead of some of those? That's the challenge we see for them.
Sure. And how do you sort of differentiate yourself from some of the other organizations in the market that focus on data? And so what, I guess, gap are you able to fill for the travel managers?
Yeah, I think for us, I think I mentioned it maybe before, but the key thing for us is, and I think maybe COVID's even prompted a bit of this, is that everyone wants data. I think the amount of time we spent here in the UK looking at the politicians giving us their graphs on how things were changing, and I think to persuade people to follow our program or to do the right thing or to trust the experts, people want to see the data behind it. So I think where our focus and our uniqueness, I believe, is how do we take that data, and travel data is, I think, uniquely complex. I promise you, I talk to data experts from all other industries, and we've got it tough in our industry. It is hard to deal with, particularly hotel data, and the changes that happen all the time. So we do the hard work of making that complexity really simple, and giving a few key metrics in a really well-designed way to the decision makers within an organisation. So I said not just the travel managers, but including the travel managers. But what data do you need to give the CEO? What questions are they asking? How do we get ahead of them? What about your CFO? What are they asking? How do we make sure that we really service their needs in a very unique way? What about the normal line manager, the budget holder? Now, they've got a budget to manage. They've got employees they're authorising travel for every day. What data do they need to make the best decisions about their travel? and even down to individual travellers. I think everyone wants data, and everyone thinks they're an expert. The traveller. Every time you talk to someone on a plane, you say you're in travel. You get the diatribe of how that everything that we do wrong in the industry, right? But everyone needs data to understand what they're supposed to be doing, what's the right thing, and why. And I think that's what we really focus on. It's that servicing that wider community within an organisation with really pertinent, well thought out data that answers their questions.
Sure. So I think a newer focus for travel managers has been sustainability.
Yeah.
And so thus that is need for additional data to provide so that they can support not just their travel program's sustainability targets, but their company's sustainability targets. So how are you seeing travel managers use that data in different ways?
Yeah, I think it's been a real new focus. I think traditionally travel managers have been procurement orientated, so trying to manage the pounds and the pence, and now they've got these new metrics that need to be managed. And I think for many organisations at a very senior level in their businesses, they've come out with targets, net zero targets by 2020, 2030, whatever that might be. The challenge is, how does that filter down into travel, which for many organisations is a large part of their Scope 3 emissions. So I think the way that travel managers are kind of addressing this is manifold, but I think the most important thing they can do is just try and give some visibility around the business. Sustainability shouldn't be a metric just for the travel manager, but really you want everyone to start engaging with this thing. When they're signing off a trip to allow someone to travel from A to B, they don't just want to know what the budget impact is. I think it's really important that they see what the environmental impact is.
Absolutely.
So I think that visibility is really key. And then that's the kind of first thing, and then maybe I'd take kind of step one. And as travel managers then kind of move that forward, I think it's then really important to provide some good choices to the decision makers. So it's around the so what part we say in data. It's not just the what, how many kilos of carbon have we produced, but so what could we do differently? And then that becomes part of that kind of scenario management to help them understand, do more of this, do more of that. And I think that's the kind of the second part, which is kind of soft. It's providing those kind of nudges, those kind of prompts, help people's conscience to kind of feel like, oh man, that's going to be a lot of carbon, we really need to do that. And then I think the third thing I would suggest is, and a few travel managers, and only a few at the moment, but I think this will change, is actually to think about sustainability metrics in terms of control. And a few people we work with have actually started saying, if you go over a certain carbon budget or carbon cap, then you aren't going to travel. I think that's for that. Probably couldn't have imagined that a few years back, but I think as you're kind of moving down that or increasing up that sophistication and focus for an organisation, there's going to be a time where in the near future people are going to be stopped to travel because of the environmental impact. And I think that's probably a mindset shift for us in our industry for sure.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So continuing just for our last topic of conversation before we wrap up, so continuing this with the topic of sustainability, organizations often focus on airline emissions. That's what we have the most information on right now. But we have lots of other travel categories. You already made a reference a few minutes ago that hotel data is often very complex.
Yeah.
So what about sustainability data for other categories like accommodation, car rental, train, etc.? What are you seeing?
Yeah, and I think we have focused on it because, as you say, it's probably the easiest to get hold of. It's also the biggest number most of the time.
Sure.
So, 80-20 rule, pick the big one, go for it. So do that first. The struggle I find with the airline side a little bit is if I need to go to New York, there's only one way I can get there. I'm going to have to fly there. So I haven't got a lot of choices around that. And maybe airline A or airline B might be marginally different, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of carbon produced from that trip. But we've got a lot of choices around the other incidental parts of our trip that we could make that do have maybe not as big in terms of kilos, but those choices add up. Now, do you stay near the airport or do you stay in the city where there's more stuff going on?
Sure.
Do you take the train from the airport or do you take a taxi from the airport? Do you order an electric vehicle or do you order a traditional petrol vehicle? So I think all those choices are actually fairly easy to make for the traveller, but the data from that is often in many different places because it's in expenses and it's on your credit card and it's not as easily accessible as your airline data, which is really good. Yeah. So I think the challenge, although I think there's lots you can do in that space, the challenge is to really kind of get that data together, pull it into one space. You can actually help people make all of those lots of little choices, which actually do add up across an organisation, and are probably easier to change than you need to fly, right?
Right. Well, Dan, we are out of time. It has been lovely chatting with you
Great
today.
discussion.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you very much.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.